Formula One just went back to the Nürburgring and almost nobody noticed. McLaren ran a 2-day test at the Nürburgring this week, but this wasn't a performance test and there's basically zero competitive takeaway from it. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri were there running a controlled tyre development program for Pirelli focused entirely on the 2026 tyres. And those tyres are fundamentally different, narrower, different construction, and designed for a completely new generation of Formula One cars. The running took place on the Nürburgring GP circuit, not the Nordschleife, and everything about the test was tightly controlled. Now, this is important. The team isn't deciding what to run, Pirelli is. Stint length, compound selection, fuel load targets, even pace, all predefined to isolate tyre behaviour, so the car itself becomes a test rig. McLaren were using a modified current spec chassis, what's typically called a mule car, adjusted to simulate 2026 load conditions. That means non-representative aero balance, altered ride heights, and setups are designed to generate the kind of vertical and lateral loads those future tyres will see. So again, lap times don't matter, the drivers aren't pushing for peak performance, they're driving to deltas. What Pirelli is actually collecting is structured, repeatable data. The program usually starts with baseline correlation runs, short controlled stints to understand track grip, surface evolution, and ambient conditions. From there, they move into compound comparison. That's back-to-back runs on different prototype tyres under near identical conditions. They're looking at initial grip, warm-up characteristics, and how quickly performance starts to fall away. Then you get into long-run work, which is probably the most important part. Extended stints designed to simulate race conditions, and this is where they build degradation curves. How lap time evolves over a stint, how much of that is thermal degradation versus actual wear, and where the performance cliff starts to appear. They're also monitoring temperature behaviour, both surface and core, to understand the tyre's operating window. Too narrow and the tyre becomes unpredictable, too wide and you lose performance sensitivity. There's also structural work going on. These 2026 tyres have different sidewall characteristics, so they're analysing deformation under load, especially through high-speed corners and traction zones. The Nürburgring GP layout is actually useful for this. It gives you a mix of medium and high-speed corners, repeated load cycles, and reasonably stable conditions for correlation. McLaren split the running between both drivers, although Piastri's program was partially limited by technical issues. That's not unusual, these cars aren't running standard configurations, so reliability quirks do happen. And importantly, those issues aren't indicative of anything performance related. This test was originally supposed to happen in Bahrain, but that was cancelled, which is why F1 ended up back in Germany for the first time since 2020. So from the outside, it looks like a quiet, low-profile test, but from an engineering perspective, this is where the foundation gets built. The data from these runs feeds directly into Pirelli's tyre models, compound selection, construction stiffness, thermal behaviour, all of it. And that ultimately defines how the 2026 cars behave over a race distance. So, no headlines, no lap times, but a pretty significant piece of development work happening in the background.